Caught my husband texting a coworker at 1:30 a.m. You'd be so proud of me. After 12 years, I discovered a hidden Spotify playlist filled with explicit songs, and when I demanded he cut ties, he called it frustrating. Was it really just friendship? This is my first time posting, so I hope this is all legible. Additionally, this will be a lengthy post because I need to address the entire list of coincidences. My soon-to-be ex-husband, who is also 31 years old, and I are currently in the process of getting a divorce. Our divorce is not in any way related to the affair, but it certainly felt like a betrayal on his way out. I noticed that our relationship began to feel disconnected in early February. Now it is April. I asked him if we were all right, to which he revealed a list of issues. I immediately jumped into problem-solving mode by suggesting therapy and starting to address some of the things I was doing that disturbed him. I acknowledge that I can be messy and am not the best at housework, but I began to improve. About 2 weeks after our initial conversation, he mentioned he was going out for a drink with coworkers after his shift. He told me this around 10 o'clock. As he is a manager at a brewery, this is not uncommon. Around 11 o'clock, I was still awake and felt hungry, so I made a pizza and intentionally left it out for him, assuming he would be home within the hour. However, I woke up at approximately 2:45 in the morning and my husband was not home. I did receive a text from him around 11:30, indicating that he was on his way home. Strangely, the pizza had been put away, but he still was not there. I also noticed that the pizza had been put away carelessly, with slices protruding from the container, preventing the lid from closing, indicating that a drunk person had clearly done it. So he drove home drunk, ate the pizza, drove back out while intoxicated, continued drinking with whoever he was with, and then drove home drunk for a third time. After I woke up, I called his friend Zach, who he claimed he was out with that night. Zach, sounding clearly asleep, stated that my husband had come home and he did not know where he was. Well, great. When he finally returned home, it was after 3 a.m. He told me he had been at the bar Sharky's with a group of people. The next day, I was primarily upset about the drinking and driving. This behavior was completely uncharacteristic of him. It was truly reckless and dangerously insane, as he had driven under the influence 3 separate times. My primary concern was his safety, and I only confronted him about that. The following night, I am not sure what came over me. We had been together for 12 years, married for 2, and I had never sensed infidelity, but the feeling hit me suddenly. He was asleep and I decided to look through his phone. In his Facebook messages, I noticed that his female coworker, Callan, who is also married, had been messaging him. I found it a bit strange that she would message him on Facebook when she already had his phone number. While this may be trivial, it still seemed odd to me. Callan is about 10 years older than us, so one can imagine the difference between how baby boomers and millennials communicate online. Her message was sent at 1:30 a.m. and read, "Hey, I actually went out and socialized tonight. You would be so proud of me." I thought to myself, why would she need to seek validation from someone else's husband? Shouldn't she be getting that from her own husband? Why was she messaging a married man at 1:30 a.m.? Moreover, why did she specifically type out a smiley face? To me, that seemed flirty and intentional, especially given her age. I couldn't see any prior messages because they had end-to-end encryption enabled. Only her messages displayed that feature, while none of the other messages in his inbox had it. Interesting. Once I found that message and realized this woman was flirting, I began asking questions the next day. Guess who he was out with that night? Ding, ding, ding. Callan. Initially, he claimed he was out with a group of people that did not include her. Then the story shifted to her being there. Eventually, he said it was just her and supposedly one other girl. His story kept changing the more I pressed him, which eventually revealed that it was just her and the other girl, or at least that's what I was led to believe. Then I checked the bar's closing hours. Remember, he got home after 3 a.m. Sharky's closes at 1:30 a.m., and anyone familiar with bars knows they usually call last orders 15 to 30 minutes before closing. So where was he? I admit I lost my temper and expressed things like, "You are both married, what on earth, you are both disgusting and should be ashamed," emphatically emphasizing the words disgusting and ashamed. I was furious. I discovered that my husband had been involved with someone else. I began to piece together all these details. I had met Callan about 3 to 4 months prior. I thought we had hit it off and shared some entertaining banter. I thought to myself, great, there is finally another woman at the brewery I can be friends with. However, in the last month, I noticed that she began to avoid me completely and made no eye contact whenever I entered the brewery. My husband has worked there for 6 years, manages it now, they provided the food for our wedding, supplied the beer for our wedding, created a custom beer, and the entire staff was invited to our wedding. Everyone knows me and usually greets me or at least offers a passing smile when I arrive. It is a community, but not for Callan. For some reason, she suddenly changed her behavior toward me. In February, I hosted a floral pop-up at the brewery for Valentine's Day as I am a florist. One of the other women working at the brewery came and bought flowers for her husband. It was adorable. I love seeing men giving flowers. She was incredibly sweet and I had not met her before, so I thought, how wonderful, another female friendship at the brewery. That evening, I added her and Callan on Facebook because I realized I wasn't friends with them. I am friends with everyone else at the brewery, including several customers who have become friends. Keep this in mind, as it was February 14th. This was 2 weeks after I initially inquired if my husband and I were okay and learned about our issues. Fast forward to a week later when he drove home drunk, stayed out with her until 3 a.m. and I discovered the messages. While I was investigating, I also noted that Callan had denied my friend request and changed her settings so I could not add her. I had my best friend check her profile and there it was, the add button available for her to send a request. However, if I visited her profile, that button was absent. It was not possible for me to cancel the request either, the button had completely disappeared. So she specifically adjusted the settings for me alone while she still wanted to be friends with my husband. Fine, so I went ahead and added her husband on Facebook, and he accepted my request immediately. I started to dig deeper regarding what was going on after noticing that, and he informed me that they had begun a Spotify blend playlist, just the two of them for work. One cannot control what songs get added to this playlist, it automatically generates based on your information. However, you can absolutely remove songs. From her side, one of the songs added was one of Chappell Roan's most sexually explicit tracks, Red Wine Supernova. The lyrics state, "So baby, let's get freaky, let's get kinky, let's make this bed get squeaky." Excuse me, when he and I first began dating, we shared music and made each other mixtapes, so I understand that sharing music can be innocent. But given that he never did this with other women, it was clear to me that this crossed a line. Moreover, considering this particular artist is more oriented towards the LGBTQ community, what married woman would include that song in a playlist meant for her boss? It simply makes no sense. I also noticed in a recent photo at the brewery where there was a group of people, guess who was standing next to whom? Him and Callan. And in the birthday shot video, guess who was standing next to whom? Him and Callan. It could be a coincidence, but given everything else happening, it certainly raised my suspicions. Another 2 weeks passed, and in the last week of February, my husband asked me for a divorce. I was in the process of packing and leaving for my father's house, and I reiterated how unethical it was for him to be sneaking around as a married man with another married person. And then he revealed that Callan and her husband were actually separated, surprisingly, and her husband had returned home to the East Coast while we reside in the Midwest. So when I initially found out about her messaging him and that they were out until 3 a.m., I was emphatically stating, "You both should be ashamed, you're both married." Yet he had allowed me to assume she was still married when he already knew otherwise. He also claimed that she did not inform him directly, but instead told their other coworker, and he overheard it. My dear, regardless of whether she told you directly or not, clearly, she was broadcasting her relationship status loudly enough for you to hear because she intended for you to know she was available. Come on. After we fully separated, I requested one thing in the divorce. I asked him to please establish a boundary with the woman he had an affair with so that I could find closure. I requested that he delete her from social media, only communicate with her about work and stop hanging out with her, such as going out for drinks after work. If there was no real affair and if she is not a significant figure in his life, then what would be the issue? I asked him to prioritize my feelings over hers. I told him I was not demanding this, I was simply asking him to consider it. The following day, he stated he could comply. He deleted her from social media, removed their Spotify playlist, and sent her a message on Facebook clarifying the boundary that he is the boss and she is the employee, so their interactions should be limited to work-related matters. That was a positive step forward. However, I admit I felt a bit petty after he sent her that message, so I went to her husband's Facebook profile, remembering that he accepted my request, and I ensured to like the 4 most recent posts in which she was tagged. I wanted her to wake up to his message and the notifications from me liking photos of her with her husband. She blocked me and had her husband remove me from his list. I can only imagine what explanation she provided him for that, but I genuinely hope he is doing well. Furthermore, a side note, he did become friends with a different woman from a former bartending job. She too was in a relationship, but do you know the difference? They explicitly mentioned their partners to each other and immediately introduced us for double dates. We all liked each other and we remain friends to this day. I even attended her bachelorette trip. We were invited to their wedding, I did the floral arrangements, they were invited to ours, and we all became friends. I highlighted this exact example in my discussions with him and asked if he and Callan were merely friends, and she is also married, why didn't he introduce them? Why didn't he treat her the same way he treated our mutual friend? What distinguishes that friendship from the one he claims to have with Callan? He had no answer for this and evaded the question entirely. As I write this, I realize that I still have not received a response. Recently, he has completely retracted his admissions and claims he did nothing wrong with her. He even expressed to me of all people that it is frustrating to avoid someone due to this situation. Oh, I'm sorry, is it really? Is it frustrating having to avoid the woman with whom you had an emotional affair? Please let me extend my greatest sympathy to you. I asked him how this posed any dilemma. He presented a list of reasons. Working at beer festivals, collaborations with other breweries, attending live shows with coworkers, going on company trips, visiting Lake Giacomo with Zach and other brewery employees. Let me clarify. For beer festivals, only a small number of employees can attend while the rest stay at the brewery, and as the manager, he is the one who organizes the schedule. So, he could either send her to the festival while he remains at the brewery or the other way around. For collaborations with other breweries, the same principle applies. The front-of-house staff, including her, is typically not involved. It is the brewers and owners who participate, which means neither of them would be affected at all. When he mentioned attending live shows, I immediately inquired if he went with her as well. To my surprise, he said he only went with one guy who no longer works there. So what is he even talking about? That situation has absolutely nothing to do with her. The brewery has only taken one company float trip in the last 4 years, providing zero impact on him. As for visits to Lake Giacomo with Zach, I asked whether she had gone to the lake with them before and he responded no. If that is the case, then how is that a relevant example? Every single example he provided to justify why avoiding her is frustrating was entirely fabricated a collection of potential scenarios where he might be near her that could effortlessly be avoided. I am incredibly frustrated because he initially admitted to having an emotional affair, but is now asserting that he did nothing wrong and was merely talking with a friend. He initially promised to avoid her unless work necessitated it to help me find closure, allowing me not to think about my ex-husband working alongside the woman he had an affair with daily. But now he is complaining to me that it is frustrating. What do you all think? Would you classify this as an affair or is it merely friendship? Story 2. My soon-to-be ex-husband claims he did nothing wrong after texting his coworker at 1:30 a.m. while I found messages showing their flirtation. He said, it's just frustrating to avoid her, yet admitted to an emotional affair. Is he lying or just clueless? This is my first time posting, so I hope everything is clear. I must emphasize that this will be a lengthy post because I need to address the entire list of coincidences. My 31-year-old female soon-to-be ex-husband, who is also 31 years old and male, and I are currently undergoing a divorce. Our separation is not related to his affair, however, it was certainly an unpleasant surprise as he left. I began to feel that our relationship was becoming distant in early February. Now it is April. I asked him if we were okay, to which he revealed a list of issues. I immediately went into fix-it mode, offering therapy and attempting to change some of my behaviors that he found bothersome. For example, I acknowledged that I am messy and not necessarily the best at housekeeping, but I started making an effort. Approximately 2 weeks after our initial conversation, he informed me that he was going out for drinks with coworkers after finishing his shift. He told me this around 10 p.m. as a manager of a brewery. This is not unusual for him. By 11:00 p.m., I was still awake and feeling snacky, so I made a pizza and purposely left it out for him, assuming he would return within the hour. I woke up around 2:45 a.m. to find that my husband had not yet come home. However, I had received a text from him around 11:30 p.m. indicating that he was on his way back. To my surprise, the pizza had been put away even though he was not home. I also observed that the pizza was stored haphazardly, with pieces hanging out of the container, suggesting that someone who had been drinking had done it. Therefore, he drove home intoxicated, ate some pizza, then left again while still under the influence, continued drinking with his companions, and eventually drove home intoxicated a third time. When I realized he was missing, I called his friend Zach, whom he had mentioned was with him that night. Zach appeared to be asleep and informed me that my husband had indeed returned and he was unaware of his current whereabouts. Great, just great. Eventually, he came home, and it was after 3 a.m. he claimed to have been at the bar Sharky's with a group of people. The following day, I was primarily concerned about the drinking and driving, as this behavior was completely out of character for him. It was not just reckless, it was downright dangerous since he drove while intoxicated 3 separate times. My main focus was on his safety, and I only addressed that issue. The next night, I cannot explain what compelled me, but with 12 years together and 2 years married, I never sensed any possibility of infidelity until a nagging feeling struck me. While he was asleep, I looked through his phone. In his Facebook messages, I discovered that his female coworker, Callan, who is also married, had been messaging him. I found this odd because she already had his phone number, so why use Facebook Messenger? This may be irrelevant, but it felt strange. Callan, being about 10 years older than us, typed in a manner typical of older generations. One particular message was sent at 1:30 a.m. and stated, "Hey, I actually went out and socialized tonight. You would be so proud of me," complete with a typed smiley face. Why on earth does she need to seek validation from someone else's husband? Shouldn't she be receiving that from her own spouse? Additionally, why message a married man at 1:30 a.m.? The smiley face felt flirty and intentional, especially for someone her age. I could not view any prior messages as their messages were secured with end-to-end encryption, which only applied to her messages. None of the other conversations in his inbox had such security. After seeing this message and realizing she was flirting, I began asking him questions the next day. "Do you know who he was with the night he came home and then left again?" "That's right, Callan." At first he claimed it was a group of people and she wasn't included. Then it turned into a group of people where she was present, and finally he said it was just her and supposedly one other girl. Each time I probed further, his story changed, leading me to the shocking conclusion that it was only her and one other girl, if that was even true. I then checked the hours of operation for Sharky's, bearing in mind that he arrived home after 3 a.m. Sharky's closes at 1:30 a.m., and anyone familiar with bars knows that last call is typically given 15 to 30 minutes before closing time. So my husband, where were you? I admit that I lost my temper, expressing outrage that you are both married. What the heck, you are both disgusting and should be ashamed, placing particular emphasis on the words disgusting and ashamed. I was furious. It became apparent that my husband had been engaging in inappropriate behavior. I began to piece together various events. I had met Callan about 3 to 4 months prior. Initially, I thought we had hit it off and established a humorous rapport. I was excited to have a woman at the brewery to befriend. However, in the past month, I noticed that she had started to completely avoid me and any form of eye contact when I entered the brewery. My husband had worked there for 6 years, currently managing it. They catered the food and beer for our wedding and created a custom brew for us. The entire staff was invited to our wedding, so I was known there. Everyone else would greet me or at least offer a passing smile, but suddenly Callan would not engage with me at all. In February, I organized a floral pop-up at the brewery for Valentine's Day, as I am a florist. One of the other women working there purchased flowers for her husband, which I thought was adorable. She was incredibly sweet, and since I hadn't met her yet, I was thrilled to find another potential friend at the brewery. That evening, I added her and Callan on Facebook because I realized I wasn't friends with them yet. I was friends with everyone else from the brewery, including certain customers who had become friends. Keep this in mind. This was on February 14. 2 weeks later, after I asked my husband if we were okay, he revealed that we were not. Fast forward a week, and it was the night he drove home drunk, staying out with her until 3 a.m., and I discovered the messages. During my investigation, I noticed that Callan not only denied my friend request, but she also changed her settings so that I could not add her. I had my best friend check her profile, and the add button was available for her to send a request. However, when I visited her profile, that button was completely absent. I was unable to cancel a request either, as the button simply was not there for me. She altered the settings specifically for me but wanted to remain friends with my husband. Fine, I decided to add her husband on Facebook, and he accepted my request without hesitation. I continued to press my husband about the situation after realizing this, and he told me that they had started a Spotify blended playlist, just the two of them, for work. Please note that Spotify automatically adds songs to this playlist, but users can definitely remove songs. One of the songs added from her side was one of Chappell Roan's most explicit songs, Red Wine Supernova, which contains the lyrics, "So baby, let's get freaky, let's get kinky, let's make this bed get squeaky." Excuse me, when we first started dating, my husband and I shared music and created mixed CDs for one another. While sharing music can remain innocent, it is clearly known that he uses it as a means of flirtation and bonding. This crossed a boundary for me. He has never done this with other women, so it is not typical behavior for him. Additionally, Chappell's music is targeted towards the LGBTQ community. What married woman would leave such a song on a playlist for a man who is also her boss at a brewery? It simply doesn't add up. I also noticed that in the most recent group photo taken at the brewery, he was standing next to Callan. And during his birthday shot video, he was again right next to her. Perhaps that could be seen as a coincidence, but it feels far less coincidental when viewed alongside everything else. Another 2 weeks passed, and by the end of February, my husband asked me for a divorce. I was in the process of packing to move to my father's house, and once again I voiced how terrible it was for him to be sneaking around as a married man with another married person. What did he reveal? Callan and her husband were actually separated. And he had moved back up east. We live in the Midwest. At the time when I learned she had been messaging him and they were out until 3 a.m., I expressed my frustration, telling him, "You both should be ashamed of yourselves." He allowed me to assume she was still married, knowing full well that she was not. He claims that she didn't tell him herself but mentioned it to a coworker, and he just overheard. My guy, whether she told you directly or not, She was clearly broadcasting her situation loudly enough for you to hear because she wanted you to know she was available. After fully separating, I did request one thing from the divorce. I asked him to finally establish a boundary with the woman he had the affair with so I could find a sense of closure. I requested that he delete her from social media, limit their communication to work-related matters only, and cease associating with her outside of work, such as going out for drinks after shifts. If there was no affair and she was not a significant presence in his life, what was the harm? I asked him to prioritize my feelings over hers. I made it clear that this was not a demand but rather a request and told him to take a day to think about whether he could comply. The following day he confirmed he could do it. He deleted her from social media, removed their Spotify playlist, and messaged her on Facebook to set a boundary, stating that she is an employee and he is her boss, so their conversations should only pertain to work matters. Great progress. I admit feeling somewhat petty after he informed her. I went to her husband's Facebook profile, remember. He accepted my request right away and made sure to like the foremost recent posts he had tagged her in. This way she would wake up to both his message and notifications of me liking photos of her with her husband. She blocked me and had her husband remove me. I can only imagine how she explained my actions to him, but whatever the case, I hope he is okay. Additionally, he did become friends with another woman from a former bartending job who was also in a relationship. But there's a key difference. They both mentioned their partners to each other and immediately introduced us for double dates. We all enjoyed one another's company and I still cherish her friendship. I attended her bachelorette trip, we were invited to their wedding, I did the floral arrangements and they were invited to ours as well. We all became close. I pointed out this example to him, asking, if you and Callan were simply friends and she was also married, why didn't you introduce us? I followed up with, what distinguishes that friendship from your so-called friendship with Callan? He had no answer and evaded my question entirely. I realize now that I never received a response. As of late, he has recanted his earlier admissions and now insists he did nothing wrong with her. He even expressed to me that it is frustrating to avoid someone due to this situation. Oh, I'm sorry, is it? Is it truly frustrating to avoid the woman with whom you had an emotional affair? Please allow me to extend my sincerest sympathy. I asked him what constituted this dilemma. He provided a list. Attending beer festivals. Collaborating with other breweries. Attending live shows with coworkers. Participating in company trips. Going to Lake Giacomo with Zach and others from the brewery. Let me dissect this for you. Beer festivals, the entire company cannot attend, only a select few go while the others remain at the brewery. And he is the manager responsible for scheduling. He can send her to the festival while he stays behind or vice versa. Collaborations with other breweries, the same situation applies. The front-of-house staff where she works does not even participate in this. The brewers and brewery owners are in charge of this aspect. Their work does not intersect in a way that would prevent either from participating. Shows with coworkers. When he mentioned this, I immediately inquired if he had been attending shows with her as I was unaware of that, and it would further confirm my suspicions. He denied it, stating he had only gone with one coworker who no longer works there. So why is this a concern? Again, this is completely unrelated to her. Company trips. The brewery has organized only one company float trip in the last 4 years, making this point irrelevant as well. Lake Giacomo with Zach, I asked if she had ever gone to the lake with them before. He said no. So then how could this be a valid concern for you? Every single example he provided for why avoiding her was frustrating turned out to be unfounded scenarios where he could easily sidestep her presence. I am utterly exasperated because he initially admitted to engaging in an emotional affair, but now insists that he did nothing wrong, claiming it was just talking with a friend. He first said he would avoid her except for work, in order to help me find closure and not constantly think about my ex-husband working with the woman he cheated with daily. Yet now he is lamenting to me that it is frustrating. What are your thoughts? Do you believe this is an affair or is it merely a friendship?